Good morning. How are you? I guess can you hear me okay? Do I need to have a mic? You okay? Am I projecting well enough? Welcome to Health Sciences, Principles of Public Health 201. We're going to begin a journey together for this spring term, and you're going to experience a lot in the area of public health. There are a lot of things I want to share with you, and I have a certain philosophy about how I conduct the course. And I've noticed that a couple of you who've taken my 580 class are in the 201. I don't know how that happened, but they understand the method to my madness in terms of outcomes and what I'd like you to achieve in this class. The main things that I want you to be aware of is that as you're going through the university, how many of you are true sophomores? Okay, quite a few of you. One of the things that I want you to pay attention to is that whatever class you take, no matter what it is, look at the credentials of that professor teaching the class and look at their background. And one of the things the reason I bring this up is that I've seen in some instances where there are faculty or TAs that have absolutely no background and no business being in front of you, taking up your time and talking about a subject they know little more than you do. And it's my philosophy that if you're going to be paying what you pay at Purdue and putting in the time that I'm expecting you with this class, then you should have people who are really good at what they do. And that topic should be on task with what you're interested in taking. In this case, it's public health. There's not a day that goes by that there isn't something in the newspapers talking about a public health issue. And I'm going to be conducting this class a little bit differently than I have in the past. Mike is my technical assistant who will be helping collect all of the Echo 360 information. I'm mic'd up here, so we're going to be recording this. And for those where English is a second language, you'll have another chance to look at this material. And if those of you that really have a lot of content coming at you and want to look at it again, you'll have a chance to do that after the class. That doesn't mean that you can be out there somewhere else while the class is going on, because class participation, attendance does matter, and you get points for it. And significant enough that if you don't attend, you definitely won't achieve the grade that you'd like to achieve. So with my background, before coming here, I served 22 years as a commissioned officer in the U.S. Public Health Service. I served under 5 different surgeon generals, and this is the person that you see the little notice on the side of the cigarettes or the alcohol. The surgeon general says that's the person I reported to. During that time, I did work all over the world, but the entire time that I was as a commissioned officer with the Public Health Service, I was assigned to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. Within the CDC, there are several centers. That's why they call it the Centers for Disease Control. Is a group called NIOSH, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So my focus while I was with the CDC was looking at safety and health from a research perspective and looking at that overarching aspect of it in terms of public health. I have a master's in public health. I have a PhD, a dual PhD, both in the industrial engineering side and in the public health side. So basically, if I were to put what I do in a nutshell in terms of research, I design systems to solve public health problems. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing here at Purdue. In the 22 years that I was with the Public Health Service, I decided that I wanted to give something back. So in January 1st of 1999, I took an early retirement from the Public Health Service and came to Purdue. On January 3rd, I reported for duty here, and the first day I showed up, they shut down the school. And ironically, they did last week because of the cold weather. And if you do your math, I'm going on my 15th year, is that they shut down the school again. You normally never do this, right? And they did it 2 days in a row because of the snow and the cold weather. But that day that they had 1.5 feet of snow, and just the whole place just shut down. I said I was moving from Cincinnati, Ohio up here. I said, it's only 3 hours away. They can't be getting that much more snow up here. So it turned to big snow, and things went on. I've been doing this kind of work since I've been with the U.S. Public Health Service for quite a few years. So I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. I do believe that I'm qualified to be before you and to teach this class. And I tend to be more of a serious person. I do have a great sense of humor. You can ask my TAs about that. But I take this business very seriously because the more you know, the more you can use this information in terms of your eventual profession. My hope is that most of you will be able to apply this in some way in the health sciences, be it you become a surgeon, a physician assistant, a physical therapist, occupational therapist, industrial hygienist, and so on. It is something that you can't escape, and that the overarching aspects of public health, because it's not just about what happens at work, it's what happens at home. It's what happens to your family, your mom, your dad, your sisters, your cousins, your brothers, and so on. So it is overarching. And because of that, I have designed the course to have, obviously, a number of lectures from me that will come from my areas of strength, but I've also invited in a number of what I call content experts from around the university and off campus that come in to talk about various topics that are important to the area of public health. And I think you'll enjoy the journey. This is not health sciences light. I'll warn you in advance. You actually will be applying yourself. And you'll see when I go through the syllabus and I talk about the guest speakers when they come, that each time that you come to class, that you'll have to prepare, and you'll have quizzes, and you'll have some readings. And that'll be constant all the way from the start of the semester. At the end of the day, I can say whether you agree with my or not, you're going to know a lot more about this topic than what you do today. And my hope is that you find it cool stuff, and you may want to go along and have a career in that area. Certainly, I have been rewarded with that process, and I'm hoping that I can give that back in terms of showing that public is really gaining momentum in terms of the public eye and the everydayness of what's going on. Things like, you've heard about reform, politicize it, called the Obamacare. That is affecting you right now, and many of those elements within that legislation, within that law, orchestrate public health outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So Mike's bringing up the schedule. I do not use Blackboard. This is me personally, so it's nothing against the administration. I think it's it is not user-friendly. It doesn't allow you to really see everything that's going on in terms of how you're doing in this course and moving forward. So the system that I use is where we were before we became the College of Health and Human Sciences, and that was the College of Pharmacy. I use their system because I can store a lot of information on there, be able to pull from that and so on. And we'll be having you, in fact, I sent out an email this morning. Anyone see the email yet? Okay, that'll help you get that on that link. Just put in your career account, your password, and you're in. You can find out exactly in terms of grades, quizzes, and so on and so forth. So what I'd like to do is introduce my TAs, and then I'm going to go through the syllabus, talk about certain things that are important. We'll look at the speaker list, and then I'm going to give you an assignment, your first assignment right out of the gate, which will be due on Thursday. So you have only 2 days to get this assignment turned around, but I can find it. Why don't I start out with you, Jenna? Come on up. Jenna took my 580 class, and she's interested in dentistry. I'm trying to encourage her to think about becoming an maxillofacial surgeon, which is even cool. And sometimes you don't even know what's out there in your profession looking at it. And for example, many of you physical therapists, an occupational therapist, think about physiatry because you're smart enough to get into medical school. And then if you like physical therapy, that's really an occupational therapy that's a hybrid of basically designing surgeons and surgical apparatus to perform and function if you lose limbs and so on. So I'm going to go back to dentistry. And Jenna, talk a little bit about yourself. Why did I pick? And maybe some of the research. Where'd the chicken come from? No. What's the whole idea of a chicken? Better than starting fire. Yeah, chickens are so yeah, dead chicken, by the way. So that. Anyways, Jenna really knows her stuff. Very smart. She got a great personality, and her focus obviously is she wants to go into a career in dentistry. And one of the things that she doesn't know yet that I'm going to have her track on a little bit is actually oral health as it applies to public health, because you know everything that goes in here matters, right? And just a little side story. My wife was in charge of social housing, and she was over at Hawkins, and she went and bought bagels for this, and brought it in, and it was a morning sort of coffee and the whole bit. I heard this story with you, Jenna, but she came back and they hardly touched the bagels, and she couldn't figure out why. And she said, so she went back and talked to the lead person doing the maintenance of the facility, and said, truth is, our teeth are so bad that we cannot bite into the bagels. However, if you bring us a donut, we can suck it down, quote unquote. Think about what that means just in terms of the aspect of healthy food. Think about the aspects of diabetes and so on and so forth, the empty calories and so on. So here's a connection that you can see between oral health, having good teeth, and public health as it relates to adverse outcomes with a group of people. So there are lots of connections there. So whatever you're thinking about, I can guarantee you there is a connection that you can find with this class. Thanks, Jenna. Okay, Whitney, come on. And I got really excited about your project, which relates to your family. So tell them a little about your family. Great. Thanks, Whitney. And she was also picked based on her excellence and performance in the class. So thanks, Whitney. They're a nice combination. And then Sandra, come on up. Dr. Cole has been with me for a number of years. Came up, she is, I would say, very interdisciplinary in her applications and knowledge, everything from medical physics to hygiene to ergonomics to safety to radiation to public health. And she's going to be helping me with this class, and she could teach this class as well as I can, knowing what I know. But her support in all this is going to be able to help this class function and move forward and interacting with you, because one of the things I'm going to strongly recommend is Mike's coming down. That's not a good sign. Oh, okay. Okay. Usually if he comes down, the AV issue has come up. But one of the things that's important that I'll mention to you as you take your exams in this class, I strongly encourage you to go see the TAs and see how you did. And it goes without saying, and Sandra, I think, can echo this sentiment, those that come in and look at how they've done and understand where they may have made wrong choices or didn't understand the material as well tend to do better on the following exams, in particular on the cumulative exam, which is at the end of the semester. And I've seen as much as a grade difference between those that come in and those that don't. And the irony of the whole thing is that those that do really well, those are the ones, and the ones that aren't doing as well, for whatever reason, don't come in. And I understand you have busy schedules, so on and so forth, but make it, you can see from the hours up here, we're going to make it so that every day of the week at some time, it would be nice to see you come on in and take a look at how you're doing. So Sandra, without further ado, introduction. And that's it. And she's always available over in, they call it HAMP now, which used to be Civil Engineering, 1285. Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate that. I really don't like the layout of this room. It's horrible. I mean, it's not too bad, but I mean, just way over here up in the corner and stuff, I don't know. It's terrible. We could do something better about that. But I'm going to have to go over here to operate the controls. And I just wanted to cover a few things regarding the syllabus. And first thing you need to do is, I recommend this textbook. I don't know if I can outline. I don't know where this little. Well, it's the 7th edition, not the 6th edition. And the reason that it is the 7th edition, this is very important. One of the ways I like to teach this class is a newspaper in one hand, a textbook in the other, and my experience in the middle. Public health is a moving target. This is not an exercise in history. So anyone who thinks they can come in and for example, take Dr. Rosenthal's lectures from last year or the year before, or my lectures even before that, and say, okay, this is going to apply, doesn't know public health. It is a moving target that is constantly going forward and breaking new ground. And what's important now may not have been important last year. It just continues to move, and that's one of the reasons why that when we talk about this class, it's one of a kind, because this class will not be taught next year the same way, because the content will be different. Some of the basics will be there in terms of how we manage public health, what are the successful models out there, but in the long run, when we talk about what threats that we have, emerging threats that we have where we deal with public health, what's important this semester may not apply whatsoever in the summer or fall or next spring. So we have to move forward. So we have the 7th edition, which comes out, they come out with this new book in community health about every year and a half or so, because the content is always changing and the issues are different. It is a 3-credit class. It's lecture-based. My goals are obviously to impart knowledge and basic principles of public health and learn of many factors of disease and maintenance of health, to understand the complexity and multiplicity of disciplines in the practice of public health, because it's not one thing. It's many things coming together that form public health. Our objectives then, obviously, to understand the basic terms, to understand the causal factors of disease and prevention, disease prevention, understand the complex fabric of public health at the local, state, and federal levels, and then what practices are in play in order to be able to use public health in such a way that it prevents disease and promotes health. This is probably what you're interested in terms of requirements and grading. I have found that in all my experiences that if you go for the grade, you're going to work a lot harder than if you just go for the content. If you're going to go for what interests you, because there's so much at the table here that you can do really well. You say, wow, this is really cool. I want to learn more about it. You'll find that these things apply, and then it gradually builds. If you go for the grade, you're going to work a lot harder because now you're chasing the grade rather than the content. So be careful about that. So the way this all works, the grade breakdown is that we have attendance, participation, and group discussions. That's at 5%. So basically just showing up means that you get 5%. Obviously, I'll be somewhat demonstrative in the way I execute the class. So I'll be interacting with you with questions and so on. So will the guest speakers. And one of the things that we have with that will be homework assignments. And some of the homework assignments, I'll give you a homework assignment, and then what I'll do is I'll test you on that material in class. So I say, well, your homework assignment is on Tuesday. I want you to read the following things. Here's the things I'd like you to get from it. And in class, we'll go through that. And you're going to be using clickers in this class. You're not going to be using Scantrons except for the exams. So if you don't have a clicker, go get a clicker. Get the newer clicker if you can. I think you can sell these things back when you're done. But other classes may be going the same route. And the reason I'm going the clicker route, and I did it a long time ago, and the technology wasn't as reliable. Now it's much better. And I did it in the 580 class, is that it gives you immediate feedback on how you're doing in the class. And I think that's important. I mean, in other words, you see right there how you did, how people responded as a group. It also tells me if I see a spread in the answer that 25% of you said A, another 25 B, and so on, I didn't do a very good job communicating that thought to you in terms of the take-home point. But if I see the majority on a particular A, B, C, or D on your clickers, then it tells me I've communicated it and you've got it, and we can move on. It is immediate feedback. It is a way of evaluating not only yourselves, but it's a way of helping keep me honest in terms of how I'm running the class and making sure the content is there. So realize that with the homework, some of it you may have to bring in, such as the assignment that I'm going to give you today. Other times, I'm just going to say you're going to be responsible for this homework on such and such a day, and we'll do it in a quiz format. Quizzes are important. We have the quiz questions, and they're going to be based 2 to 5 questions. Oops. They're going to be based on the previous lecture. So, for example, I'm just doing an overview right now of the class and so on, but what I'll do is just to make sure you bring in your clickers on Thursday, and to account for your presence here, I'm going to have a couple of questions, and you'll respond to those. You'll see the immediate feedback, so you get into the groove of that. So by Thursday, we'll be going with the clickers and measuring your attendance and your responses that way. So when I look at with the 2 to 5 questions, from the quiz questions, what that means is that you also have reading assignments, and you're responsible for those reading assignments, and I'll make sure you understand what's there. And those that took the 580 class, I told them I try very hard not to get into the details of something, trying to find what you don't know. What I want to find is what you do know. So I tend to pay a lot of attention to tables and figures and trends and things of that nature. In other words, the concepts that are important to me, not the minutia of trying to remember infinite details, unless it's a big detail. And many things you're going to know by the time you walk out of the class. How many people live on the planet? How many people live in the United States? What's the largest country in the world? What's the second largest, third largest? How big is the state of Indiana? Why is that important? Because that's all denominator information that you can divide into the numerators, whatever aspect of public health that you're looking at. So we need to know that denominator stuff, because if someone, tells me, boy, there's, at least 10 people that got really sick at Purdue from a meningitis issue. Well, my question is, well, how much meningitis do we have, in the past at Purdue? And how many people are we talking about in terms of exposure? So you know that we roughly have about 40,000 students on campus. 10 meningitis cases is, it doesn't seem like a high number. But if you haven't had one case from being reported before, that's a big deal, right? So that's how all that comes into play. And so the reading assignments then come in and combine with the quiz questions. On average, we'll look at 4 to 5 quiz questions per period, per class period. Then if we go down and look at how all this adds up, so the activities that I mentioned, your participation, the interaction, quizzes, and so on, count totally for 25% of the grade. Significant. Then there's the first midterm, the second midterm, and the third midterm. Each of those, the first and second midterm, 15%. The third one is cumulative, so it adds up to 25%, an extra 10% on top of that from because it does involve what you learned in the first and second and then the third parts of this class. And then finally, at the end, there's a project. In some aspects, I give students an option of a project or not in terms of extra credit and so on and so forth. This is not going to be extra credit. This is something that's going to be for your grade. However, I will incentivize as we go along through this class opportunities to be able to get extra credit. The thing I don't do, and some of you already know this, is that I will give everyone opportunities to do better, but at the end of the day, your grade is your grade. I do grade on half scale, by the way, so I do B pluses and A minus and so on, that way. But it's not about negotiating after you see what you've got. It's about doing what you have in order to get what you've earned. That's what's important to me. And I think most of you have interacted with me in the past, see that I try to be as fair as possible about that. So regarding the project then, you're going to work individually on unit mastery of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention unit mastery system for epidemiology. So in a way, this is a course within a course. There are 6 modules, and you need to, in order to pass it and get your certificate, to get just your base for this percentage right here, we'll pace you on that, and I'll show you on the schedule right here, that your reading assignments are going to be such that if you try to cram and get it all done, you're really going to be in trouble. So the idea is to unit master to get through it. In order to keep all of us honest about that, I'll be asking questions related to those units and reading assignments. Why is this nested within here? Because I think some of you will be taking or have taken Dr. Black's epidemiology class. Great class. He's going online with this thing. I think he's almost going full tilt on this thing with online offerings and so on. My hope is that if you've taken this class, that you're going to find this augments what you already know in a big way. If you haven't taken it, I guarantee by the time you take his class, you can fully appreciate all the things that he has to unfold before you in terms of what epidemiology is all about. But to me, the centerpiece of public health is epidemiology. It's about counting, and it's about numerators and denominators and prospective and retrospective, about severity rates, incidence rates, and prevalence rates, and so on. And if you can't speak that language, if you don't understand the fundamentals of that, it's like trying to do something that you have no skill sets to do. It just becomes a bunch of random facts for you. Here you will have some applied skills to do that. It is internationally recognized and renowned, this particular certificate series. You all will have to do it and get it done in order to get credit for it. But in terms of the full percentage, there's a cut rate. I believe it's around 75. Okay, 70. You have to get at least 70% of the questions correct in order to go on. They used to do it where you would take one unit and then you'd pass that. The second unit, you pass that, and so on. Now what they do is they have you take the whole thing at the end. And you have to have 70%. So you have to demonstrate and show me that certificate that you've got through that in order to get credit for this particular project. Now, the higher you go, then the higher the overall percentage is. So if you get 100, for example, then you get the full weight of the credit of this particular project. That's the difference right there. So it incentivizes you to really go after this material and do well. It is to be done on an individual basis, not a group basis. Certainly you can talk with each other about the content and so on and so forth. I encourage that. But sitting around and having someone else do it for you and say, well, just go through it and this is how you get through it, you've done yourself a disservice and you've used that other person, which is a bad move. So please don't do that. It's on the honor system. And when I did this has been out for years now. This particular unit mastery system. When I took it, this was the thing. This was a tipping point. It gives you an idea how long ago it had been out there. It was a tipping point for me to really get turned on to public health. It really was. It's well written, case descriptions of real things that happen where people get sick and die and so on, and you'll see that in these modules. So all of you are required to do that, and the website, as you can see, is right on the screen there. And normally I get a little thing here that tells me how to write the thing up, but I guess maybe it doesn't do it except for PowerPoint. But anyways, it's right here, the link, and it brings it right up. And what I recommend is obviously you have to download the module electronically, but you can print it off and then go through it. It's fairly significant. I'd say it's probably a couple inches or so of paper, right? Two-sided. Okay, so it's about an inch two-sided. Yeah. Right. Okay, it's quite a bit. All right. So then 5% is a poster. We'll provide you a template for doing this, and is to develop a particular topic of your interest, but the focus is going to be on molecular epidemiology. As I mentioned, I have a degree in epidemiology, and it was my nature at the time is that I didn't want to be put behind a desk and crunching numbers. I mean, it really is. It's sort of a glorified statistician. And I said, oh, this is back in the day, and I don't want to do that. That's not me. It's not my nature. I had, all kinds of nightmare visions about what that might look like and so on. Had I known what has happened now, I definitely would have stayed the course and looked at it, because there are all kinds of things that get you out from behind the desk and out into the world as epidemiologists. Molecular epidemiology is one of them in terms of being disease detectives and so on. I went through the Epidemic Intelligence Service courses in 80 and 81, and the people that went through these classes were assigned sites all over the world in terms of merging pathogens and so on, Ebola viruses and things of that nature. Really, really exciting stuff that you had to track it down at the source. So that's one. The second is that because of the evolution of the science and the tools that are out there, there are going to be tons of jobs, well-paying jobs, very rewarding jobs in this particular area, because every generation gets a label, right? We're the baby boomer generation, so you have the Gen Xers and so on and so forth. I believe you are the molecular generation. You're going to have more information and more control over your destiny than you've ever had in the history of mankind. And it's evolving on a daily basis. And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a few minutes. So that's one area. The other is geoepidemiology. This is basically using satellite imaging and so on and so forth, looking at evolution of diseases and so on. And I've got Dr. James Howell, who's coming in to give a lecture next week. He was with the Indiana State Health Department. He was a deputy commissioner there. And one of the stories he talked about was West Nile virus down in the southern part of Indiana. Jen, or Whitney, where you are, your family. And what was interesting about it is that it was coming from a certain place because people were going to local hospitals with this outbreak, with the diseases and symptoms and so on. So the state got on this, and they basically used the geographic coordinates to sort of whittle it down. They looked at reporting to the different hospitals and so on and so forth and got back. And the sum of the whole thing was that they found a particular road with a culvert, basically a ditch, that had been blocked with debris, and that formed a pond, a holding pond, to which mosquitoes were breeding, which happened to have the West Nile virus. And they tracked it right down to that. They went in there. Basically, they broke the dam, let the water run through, let the thing dry out, and all basically the infected people around that area, it went away because they basically got at the source and took care of it. Think of how cool that is to be able to go out there, see this from satellite imaging, look at emergency room reports, look at hospital reports and so on, whittle that down to zip code and so on, whittle it down by age, by occupation, so on and so forth, and right down to that ditch, and go there yourself, unplug that thing, and make a difference. We're not talking about someone who gets a little sick. We're talking about people who die. And what you've just done is prevented that. That's pretty cool stuff. So geoepidemiology is another really cool area to think about and to get into. So that's why I have epidemiology as a centerpiece for this public health class. I think you're going to like it a lot. It means you're going to have to work a little harder, but I think you're going to find the reward in that process, especially if you're goal-driven. You'll like it. I hope so. Exam dates. Our first midterm's February 1st. Our second is on March. And our third, these are all on Thursdays, is April 24th. All will be in class, and they'll be designed such that you'll have enough time to get through it and think and get the job done. But it's a closed book. You'll be using Scantrons for this information to respond to the questions and so on. The beauty of it is that in the past, larger classes like this have always been subject to whatever day the final exam is going to fall on, that's you. And I've had one too many of those that fell on a Saturday, right? I mean, at the end of the week, a Saturday morning, and trying to turn this stuff around and get all those grades posted and put in properly on that following Tuesday was just driving me crazy. And what I found more often than not is that your bandwidth, your mental bandwidth, is much better if we do this during the academic year, just before Dead Week, get that out of the way. And then when we have our parade of winning posters the following week, during Dead Week, that Tuesday and Thursday, you're more relaxed because everything is pretty much done. And the only thing is the final, obviously, evaluation of the posters and so on. We get up there, you relax, and then you hit the ground and you do your exams for the other classes. And so far, I've found that formula to work. If you have any other ideas, please let me know. But that's what we're going to do it this year. I've already talked about the quizzes. We're going to be using the clicker, so get your clicker if you don't have one. Anticipation, attendance, and discussion, we've already talked about that. Midterms, talked about that. This is kind of important to me. And so far, you've been great. Maybe it's what's called an orienting response. You're just listening carefully because after this, you can kind of go off on a tangent. Civility is really important. And we're starting to get this, I mean, the faculty are starting to get this more and more every year. I get beat up about this sometimes, and other times, I get some praise for it. But some of you are probably really busting it to be here. I mean, you're paying out of pocket, you're working the extra hours, maybe a second job, so on and so forth, or maybe your family's making sacrifices and so on. And I think for most of you, you want to succeed and you want to learn. There are others, though, that are in here and they don't get it. Not yet. They get it a little bit later, but sometimes they just don't get it now. And what happens is that they're not focused on the course, and they're doing their own thing. They might be texting, they might be on the internet, they might be surfing, they may be looking for a new pair of shoes. I don't know. Whatever it is you do. I can't control that. But what I can control is that if you are interacting with someone sitting next to you or causing a disturbance in some way that that person can't focus or people around them can't focus, then what that is that you have then basically encroached your behavior on them, and you're impacting the quality of what they want to experience in this class and to learn. And it's just like anything else, is that if you really got to do well and you're focused and you want to achieve, then I'm 100% behind you. If you don't, I can't stop individual acts of whatever it is you want to do. But if it becomes a group thing, then I do step in and try to remedy that, because it's so important, I think, that we have a civil manner. And I could say, all across the country, I lecture in different universities and so on. I would say Purdue as a whole is heads above some of the other institutions that I've gone to, where the students just don't get that part of it. It's not that like they're talking in front of me. I'll just be in the audience or something with a group, and there's just all this chatter going on. It's just amazing. And so, kudos to you for, basically the civility that you already bring to Purdue. But for me, it's pretty important to take it up to the next level and maintain your attention as best you can. And let's see what else we got here. This is just about the different chapters, and you can read that. I'm not gonna bore you with the different chapters of the 7th edition. Now, I think Mike put both of these up here somewhere. Here it is, I think. Yeah. Oops. Come on. All right. Now, the topics and the guest speakers and so on, I just want to give you a highlight of this. Notice over in the far right-hand margin, you see Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Principles of Epidemiology readings. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, what that is that these are guided by these dates. So by January 21st, you should have completed that first unit. And in order to maintain a certain element of honesty and pacing yourselves, because you can't cram for this. I guarantee you can't cram for it. We'll have basically quiz questions nested, and I'll give you a heads up about that, nested within that time period, saying these are based upon your Unit 1 readings to make sure that you're there and you understand it. Okay, so that's important. So you see, I'm starting out here with my introduction, orientation, and so on. Then I'm really going to try to make the case on Thursday about public health. What it is, what it's been, what it is, and where it's going, and talk just a small amount about the Affordable Care Act in terms of what it means to you, because there's a lot of misinformation out there going back and forth. Because I have a full lecture on that included with health communication, but I just want to touch on that a little bit with you. Then we have Dr. Howell coming in next week, and he's going to talk about disease patterns and populations with the Indiana State Health Department. And he is just a class act. He's a Purdue alum. He got his doctorate in veterinary medicine and then went and basically served out his career with the State Health Department. He is just one class act. I can't say enough good things about him. Then you got me again. I come back. We talk about the life cycles, and I do 3 of these. First is basically from a baby and childhood. Then we go through middle life, including your demographic, through teens and college, and then we go into the older set, more to my generation, and so on. And each group has different health challenges, public health challenges, and you'll understand those a little bit better as we cycle through them. Then we have Jerry Heiner that's coming in. Jerry also is in my opinion, just a class act, and he's going to talk about vaccines and vaccine compliance in public health. There's been a lot that's been talked about in terms of some early bad information that basically the scientist who published this information has been disgraced. Because basically it was saying that if the vaccines have mercury in it, and because the mercury is in it as a preservative, it's causing all this autism that we're seeing, so on and so forth. And he published this data, and he since has retracted it and said he falsified it. But people remember this stuff and say, hey, there's preservatives in it, therefore we're not going to do it. And the interesting sort of connection to this whole thing is that other countries now are getting up to speed with public health, doing vaccines the whole bit, and some pockets in this country are not having their children get vaccinated. And what's happening is that now they're carrying the disease over to these countries that basically have worked really hard to wipe it out. Measles, mumps, rubella, and so on. And they're saying, we don't want you people coming over here. Just what an interesting reversal of fortune when you see how all this has taken place, all based upon bad science. Just amazing. Anyways, Jerry's going to talk about that. Linda Cheatham is an attorney and a judge, and she's just absolutely amazing. She is all over the place. She's also with Purdue, and she's going to talk about public health, law, and policy. It's really great to have her early in the course because it really sets the framework. And understand this, if you're thinking about any kind of law in this business, just remember that when you think about public health and policy, that's one thing. But when you think about law is really a process, right? It's about implementing those policies, and it's the process, not so much about the details of that, but how law is structured in such a way that what's set out there is actually enforced and outcomes from that process. Then we're going to have something that's really near and dear to me. Bob Wallingberg is going to come in from the American Red Cross, and we're going to have an in-class CPR. I can say with reasonable certainty, I've been in this situation a couple of times where someone's going to drop, and it's going to be a heart attack. And there's nothing nothing that shakes your soul more than not being able to do something. That just, I don't know what to do. I've not had any training or anything. Versus being able to drop down on your knees and perform CPR. You don't have to do the mouth-to-mouth anymore. It's really easy stuff to do, so we'll bring in the mannequin, so on and so forth. And I think we'll have a great experience with that whole process. That, to me, is great public health, because as you are younger, you're going to be running across people who are older or those people at risk and so on. And I can tell you it is a game changer if you know what to do and you've done the best you can. Then we have our first midterm. Then we have Arun Bunia. He has several books that he's published and so on. Just love this guy. Infectious diseases spread by food and control of food pathology. So we're seeing all these newspaper articles coming out now about salmonella and other issues with chicken and things like, is your chicken safe to eat, all this. He's going to talk a lot about that stuff, and you'll know the difference between food poisoning, something that was contaminated in the process of making food, versus the food being contaminated itself in terms of what the adverse health outcomes are from that. Then we have Tom Turpin. Anyway, if you don't know Tom, he is probably one of the best and most skilled educators / entertainers I've ever come across. He's all about bugs, right? He started Bug Bowl and everything, and it expanded from there. He's an amazing guy. And he's going to talk about infectious disease and the process and transmission vectors. And he touches upon the history of how we've evolved from our suspicions and understanding of health of the day to where we are right now. Just a great guy. Jason Cannon is a relatively new faculty member in our school. I wanted him to talk about toxicology and public health. He's fresh. He's got some great ideas, doing some really neat work in the area of Parkinson's disease and so on. People who have taken this class have given him rave reviews. So I think you're really going to enjoy him. I'm back with you on health communications as public health. I will then expand on the Affordable Care Act and basically facts and fantasy there. Then we have Dr. Santerre, who's in food and nutrition, food regulation, nutrition. He's come in. Normally I have Connie Weaver, but she's become a pretty big shot in our school with all the stuff that she's doing on the President's Advisory Committee, being the President of the United States, for example. She's quite a busy lady, and I've been honored to be able to secure Charlie in this process, to have him come in and talk about the food, nutrition, and regulation. And then we have Paul Zemer coming in. Paul Zemer was the second head of our school of health sciences. He was the assistant secretary for the Department of Energy, and one of the coolest people you ever know. It was one of those people, I don't know if you ever had an experience in your life where the person is just so knowledgeable and you're so in awe that all you know is you just watch them breathe and you've learned something. This is that kind of guy. Paul is just an amazing person, and he's coming in and is going to give us that lecture on that connection between radiation exposure, health assessment, and so on. And I'm going to prime him a little bit to talk a little bit about the Fukushima issues that occurred over in Japan and so on. What a mess, right? We don't get it in our news over here, but that thing is leaking. It's basically drilling itself down in terms of the nuclear reaction. It's like no one's paying attention, and you're seeing all these fish kills and things of that nature all around the Pacific Basin. There is a connection there. So I'm going to ask him to talk about that with you when he comes in. Should be pretty neat stuff. Non-work safety and health. This is stuff when you're off duty. What kind of things happen out there in terms of safety as it relates to public health? Not a lot of people see that connection, but it's there because of my background. I'm going to talk about it because I think it's important. Then we have Cindy Knox coming in. Dr. Knox is over in pharmacy, and I love her lectures because she just lets her hair down and she just lays it out there because she's involved in the drug courts here and down in Indianapolis and so on. There is nothing she hasn't seen or heard, and she talked about basically all the behaviors that you've either heard about or maybe have been on the fringe of or maybe somehow got sucked into. And she talks about those outcomes. So a great lecture from her. And then I have Lisa Heinold. Lisa Heinold is going to come in. She's the person that and you may not have seen them, but others may have seen her, is that if you go off and somehow you just made some wrong decisions and you're drinking underage, you go over the top or whatever, you're on campus, she's the person you see. And they basically have to go through alcohol education, so on and so forth, and Purdue tries to keep their arms around you and say, listen, we got some issues, but in some instances they actually, intercept people who become habitual drinkers or where alcohol is a trigger. It's just their Achilles heel. We all have Achilles heel, by the way. I mean, if you don't, then maybe your Achilles heel is vanity, or pride or something, but we all have weaknesses. And there are some people where alcohol is that trigger. And it starts early, and sometimes it can start at the college level, and it goes on to a life, or maybe sometimes a shortened life of abuse. Lisa's going to come in and talk about that as it relates to public health. Then we have our second midterm. We got spring break. Yay! And then I've got Terry West coming in. Right above us over in Ham is Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. Who knew? It's one of the best departments, not only on campus, but of its kind in the country in terms of universities. And Terry, we're going to talk a little bit about this whole idea of climate change and what's going on and the movement of pathogens, for example, in the subclimates now, the more temperate climates because it's warming up and so on. And what kind of changes that we're seeing as a result of this. And one of the things that really stands out, I went to a lecture about a year ago from their group, and he said, everyone's talking about the Earth heating up. Certainly wouldn't make that point last week, right? I mean, talk about the deep freeze, from this so-called polar vortex. But everyone's talking about that and said, you know what, you shouldn't be so much focused on the temperature increase. What you need to do is look at the consequence of that in terms of moisture. So what does that mean? So what does that mean? I said, well, what it means is that because we're warming up the Gulf, we have more moisture coming up from the Gulf that's now hitting the north winds coming down from the North Pole, from Canada and so on. And where the two meet, we're now going to see much, much heavier rainfall in the springs and much greater snowfall during the winters. So when I was growing up, I grew up in Michigan, I remember going out in the front yard and digging snow igloos and all this other stuff, having a great time. He said, that's back. For more than 20-some years, certainly during your time, you really see a lot of snow if you're from this area, except for the time I showed up, first day on campus. But the idea is that the snow that you're seeing out there, we're going to have a lot more snow. We've got snow coming in tomorrow. We're going to see a lot more of it during your lifetime, more so than you've ever seen so far. There's a question over here. Oh, are they? Okay, well, we'll try to get that squared away. I think it's for the A team and the B team. No, I'm teasing. I'll get that squared away. We go through and reproof these things 3 or 4 times. I'll make sure it gets right. But they're both on Thursday, so I'll get that squared away. Okay, we'll get that taken care of. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. That's a big deal, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so Terry's coming in. John Manning. Dr. Manning is an oral maxillofacial surgeon. I'm sure Jenna will be all pumped up about that one. He's going to talk about oral health as it relates to public health, and I'm excited about him coming in. He's got a big practice down in Indianapolis, and a super lecturer, by the way. He's one of those people that can just speak volumes in very straightforward ways. Love that guy. Pam Altonen is a nurse. I believe very strongly in our nursing program and what it contributes to public health. Pam will be coming in and talking about nursing as it relates to the public health model. We have Carl Griffin coming in. He's an occupational physician. Some of you may have seen him for 101. He shifts gears now and goes outside the envelope of occupational health and gets into public health as it relates to medicine. Then we have Brad Duerstock. Brad Duerstock, he is a quadriplegic, and he's over in biomedical engineering. Also, I think he has a part-time appointment in veterinary medicine, and he's one of the people that I've been working with over in the Discovery and Learning Research Center on trying to design laboratories, wet laboratories, for our veterans that are coming back with lower limb injuries, in particular being able to work in wheelchairs and so on. And those are good-paying jobs, by the way. High five, low six-figure salaries and so on once they get technically trained. And he's going to come in and talk about public health as it relates to those with disabilities. I think you'll really enjoy not only seeing him and having him lecture, but also just, to me, he demonstrates what we're capable of in terms of success of technology and the convergence of medicine and public health, because he'll be a living example of just that when he comes in. Then we have Ellen Kosick talking about mental health and stress. She's over in management. One of the things that I believe very strongly that you are going to have to address, your generation, and it's not that we didn't have it, I mean, our generation, but your generation more and more. We have just turned our backs on it, but there are just too many things that are happening, especially out of your age demographic, is our mental health issues. The mental health issues are big deals. Someone decides to go off and they get a hold of a gun and they decide, okay, I'm going to just take out a whole bunch of people, then I'm going to kill myself or try to be killed in the process or so on. It's just, the recurrence of that is just totally out of control. Something has to be done. And it's something that I think your generation will be able to solve. I really do. I have faith in that. Then we have Steve Witz coming in. Steve Witz is a guy that I helped get hired. He's the director of the Regenstrief Center for Healthcare Engineering over in Discovery Park. And Steve's going to he's going to be talking about public health, improving healthcare delivery in the 21st century from that particular perspective. An eloquent speaker, and I think you're really going to enjoy him. Then we have, as the last outside speaker, Dr. Didek, Ulrika Didek. She's going to talk about MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging, and public health in terms of collecting databases, looking at things like Alzheimer's, for example, looking at tumors and the evolution of that, looking at the way molecular epidemiology feeds in with MRIs, be able to solve some of the problems that her particular discipline lends itself to. By the way, this is another one worth really looking at, giving a hard look at in terms of opportunities for careers. It's out there. So then we have a wrap-up of the course, and then our third midterm. And that should do it. Okay, then we have posters on parade for Dead Week, and then that's it. So, covered quite a bit. Any questions? Because I'm going to switch over to your assignment from this point on. Yes? Yes, you have to register your clicker. Yeah. That's a good question. Okay. You register on Blackboard. We'll send you an email on that, okay? Because Sandra just said, okay, we got the clicker thing. We just thought it was kind of automatic. No, there's a lot to it, right? So we'll make sure you get all that information, okay, about the process of that. Josh handled my 580 class, and it magically all happened, so sorry. I'm hoping that it'll magically happen by Thursday for you. All right, so any other questions? I'm sorry, and hold your hands so I can see it, because the way the room is kind of flat. Yes? Yes, well, yeah, the epidemiology stuff is when you download it, you'll see what those readings are. And when you see things like selected readings and so on, what I've done, I've asked the faculty or those presenters to send me that information, and you'll get it in advance of their lecture. Okay? So there's a lot of reading going on, and I will help try to sort a lot of this stuff out for you. Okay? So you're not going in panicking and say that there's so much, there's a sea of stuff. Because at this level, I really want you to understand concepts. There are certain facts I want you to know, but it's really the concepts I want you to get down. And then I want you to connect those concepts and start to see the relationships there. Because once you've done that, this becomes a lot of fun. Yes? Yeah. Because I think Blackboard sucks. And that's why you wouldn't find it there. Now, you're going to find it at the very beginning when I was talking about there's a website. Just click on that. That'll lead you to the College of Pharmacy. And the College of Pharmacy, nested within there, is our course and everything that you've seen. Yeah, so and that's a fair question. I'm sorry? Right. So basically, that information, so we're borrowing some of those resources, but in terms of your grade and all this kind of posting and things of that nature, it's done through the College of Pharmacy, okay, through a different site. Fair question, but we have to kind of go with the technology of what the university's invested in. Yeah, so, any other questions? Yes. Yeah, I'll post them and I'll let you know. So basically, we'll have like a little briefing before each class. Say, pay attention to the following things. And then as I get those selected readings that come in, I repost this for you, and you'll see what it is and say, okay, here's your new posting. So the idea is that going there and say, okay, what's new, and so on and so forth, and you'll be able to go right to it. Okay? And then if there are PDFs and things of that nature, it's like, let's say, go to the following reference. If it's a PDF, what I'll do is I'll have that posted within the site, and it'll be for that particular instructor. Okay? Good question. Yes? Mm-hmm. The good question. So you see all these readings, are they due on that date? Yes, they're due on that date. Now, you realize your quiz is going to be the following period, right, because it's based on the content of that. But the idea is that I'd like you to have those readings done because that has you become more informed, right, with that particular lecture. If you come in just as a blank slate and know any background information, then it makes it a little more challenging for you because now all of a sudden it's like from a fire hose, it's all coming at you. Whereas if you do the readings complemented by the lecture, you say, I want to be able to connect these two dots. You said this, but the book said that. Can you help me with this? That kind of thing. And to me, that's where the learning process takes place, right? To me, it's not about what you know. It's how to access information and use it in such a way that you can promote yourself with it. That's really key. How to think. That's so critical. I found it. You can learn anything, but if you don't know how to think, you're really in trouble. And so this helps you connect those dots. Other questions? Can I have a question from a guy? Listen, all the ladies are asking questions right here. The guys are hanging back. So, all right. All right. Now, how do I switch over to this thing? There's got to be a deal here. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. And that won't be the only time he saves me, by the way. He just saw like a little voice, from up above. There's somebody say, "Is that you?" You're going to be a little nervous here. All right, here we go. All right. So this is right out of the what is it? We're looking at the Wall Street Journal. And you can get this online too, by the way, the Wall Street. If you're a student, get a really nice discount with it. But in the future, custom fit treatments. And one of the things that Sandra mentioned, Dr. Cole mentioned, is that we have a site called molecularhub.org. And it is the #1 site in the world right now for anything molecular, in particular for diagnostics and outcomes. But we post a daily briefing on news from around the world as it relates to the molecular sciences. So as part of your project, I'm starting to get you to think about this a little bit, and as your homework assignment is that what I want you to do is I'd like you to find an article, you can go online with this, that's related to the molecular basis of disease and public health, and I'll send you an email to this so you don't have to furiously write away on this. Find an article, and you basically, the idea is that include that article with your paper submission on Thursday, but you're going to do a 1-paragraph write-up. 1 paragraph. It's going to be a summary, an executive summary of that article based on what you read. It's one thing just to say it, oh, I found something, looks molecular, copy, paste it, turn it in, okay, check it off the box, right? No. I really want you to look at this thing and understand what it is that you're reading, and it gets you going in the right direction in terms of public health, but also the molecular aspects of this that I think are important. And then include the citation. So to restate, there's assignment due. It's going to be at the beginning of class. It'll be a typed 1 paragraph, 12-point font, 1-inch margins on a paper that is your interpretation of an article that you're going to also include stapled onto that paper with your name on the front page. And below that paragraph is going to be your citation. It could be the website from where you got this, but I want you to get you into the idea of including citations with all your referenced work. There's a lot of junk out there, and you might find some junk. That might be your angle. I say, I found some junk, man, and I'm going to talk about that and why it doesn't hold water, that kind of thing. That's fine with me, but I need that from you on Thursday, okay? And it's easy to do. This is just today. I gave Jenna and Whitney the Journal and Courier, which is just, nothing exceptional, but it had 2 or 3 stories in there about public health-related issues. So are we good? Yes? What kind of what? What kind of citation? The citation is, if you actually get it from a hard copy, then you'd list the citation, the book, or whatever. If you get it from the internet, you just basically copy and paste that citation from the internet. So this would be like Wall Street Journal, WSJ, the date, and the particular article. Okay? Thanks, everybody.